Hello ladies and gentlemen, Steven here from Redolessence and welcome back to another video. Thank you all so much for tuning in, I really do appreciate it. And in today's episode, we're going to be going over my top 5 favorite cherry-based fragrances, so make sure to stay tuned. Now, I know when it comes to perfume ingredients, certainly there are some ingredients that are very common in the perfume world. We have bergamot and vanilla and sandalwood and agarwood, but very rarely do we actually think of cherry. But I must say, the fragrances out there that do contain cherry do a pretty good job of it. Now, I know cherry is one of those ingredients that can also kind of give off an almond smell, and it's also an acquired taste, I would say. So for a lot of people who wear cherry dominant scents, they have to be in it because they like the smell of cherry. And so it's one of these things where people have these mnemonic associations with it, some more on the positive side, thankfully, but these are cherry-based fragrances that I wear and some that I actually wouldn't mind smelling on my significant other. And so let's go ahead and get into the list. So getting into it, I do have one honorable mention, and of course, as always, I'll explain why it's an honorable mention. And this is a fragrance from my own brand. Now, this fragrance doesn't actually contain cherry. It contains a note of almond, but this one is called Absolutio. And this one is an almond-based fragrance by Bertrand Duchaufour, but there are a lot of other ingredients in here. You have chocolate, you have ambergris, you have a little bit of musk, you also have this really green undertone on account of oak moss and driftwood. So it's a really interesting scent, and I personally love wearing this one, and I'm going to be wearing this one a lot in the coming months, and this is one that gives off a cherry vibe in the opening, although cherry is not listed as a note. There are also at least one other fragrance in here where cherry isn't listed as a note, but as soon as you smell it, you are inevitably going to get cherry. So let's go ahead and start. The number 5 fragrance on this list is one that is an indie fragrance, and it's one that was composed by a good friend of mine, Vincent Dreamhouse, and this one is called Lucidite. And this is a well-rounded cherry scent, but it's a really strong cherry scent. And I say that in terms of the concentration of the cherry note, but also in terms of how this fragrance performs. Now, if you're a fan of indie fragrances, one thing that is a common theme, I think, or a common thread, is that a lot of indie fragrances have this sort of raw, unapologetic approach to them. And I can say that in the case of like a Slumber House or a Kerosene, and I don't think there's any exception here. And so I really enjoyed the cherry that is being used in here. And it's also counterparted up with this note of Immortelle that I really enjoy. And so I am a huge fan of the note of Immortelle, especially as it's used in Mano Hierarchinis's Immortelle. And so really, really nice fragrance. So that's number 5. Number 4 is a fragrance from the House of Sillage, and this one is called Number 1. And so really cool apparatus here, kind of opens up and you can spray it. The one thing that I particularly love about this fragrance is the fact that it has the tonka bean, it has vanilla, it has some spicy nuances, but it's not actually a cherry scent. But as soon as you spray it, inevitably you will get a smell of cherry, and I love it for that reason. It's so complex, and it's a beautiful gourmand. Very, very nicely done. The next fragrance on this list does actually contain cherry. It's actually in the name of the fragrance, and this one is called Dark Cherry and Amber by Banana Republic. And so this is a very inexpensive scent. Another thing that I want to mention about the top 3 cherry fragrances in this list is that if you are interested in picking them up, or at the very least sampling them, you can find them at Max Aroma. This video is not sponsored by Max Aroma, but all 3 of the top 3 fragrances in this list are actually a part of my December bundle for Max Aroma. And so you will get an 8 milliliter travel atomizer for all 3 of these fragrances. And so this is a really nice cherry dominant scent that doesn't smell like a synthetic or artificial cherry. And I think there's more of an emphasis on the amber accord in the base. And so you will get a little bit more vanilla in this one than you will in some of the other fragrances in this list, but definitely a solid release. And I think it's very, very easy to wear. It is a little bit on the designer level, but nonetheless a pleasant scent. The next one in this list is actually a combination of cherry and leather, and I really love that combination. This one is marketed for women, but there's just something about this that is so lovely, so delectable, and sure enough, cherry is the dominant note in here. And this is composed by Thierry Vasser, and this is obviously from the house of Guerlain because he's the in-house perfumer for Guerlain, and this is La Petite Robe Noire Black Perfecto. I love the House of Guerlain. I think they have a lot of really wonderful offerings, and Tonka Imperial is one of my favorites. Spiritu Double Vanille is another fantastic gourmand fragrance, especially for this time of the year. But this is a wonderful cherry, leather, almond sort of a scent. And if you haven't tried this one, yes, despite the fact that it's marketed for women, I find it to be unisex. Definitely check it out. This is also part of my Max Aroma bundle. And the number one fragrance in this list is also another cherry-based scent that has cherry in it, as opposed to perhaps the House of Sillage or the one from my brand, Navitus Parfum. But the number one cherry fragrance in this list is by the company Tom Ford, and this one is called Lost Cherry. I think anybody who has smelled this will see that this is a very sort of dense, thick, syrupy cherry liqueur kind of a scent. It also has almond in here, but there are some woods, there's some resins, and this is a really viscous olfactory profile, and I enjoy this one. It's sharp, but it's such a beautiful fragrance, and it's so well done. And I know scent is subjective, and so when you're in the market for a cherry-based fragrance, obviously any of the fragrances in this list will serve you really, really well. But there's just something about this fragrance that is so enjoyable, so easy to wear, so easy to pull off, but then it also doesn't smell like any other fragrance on the market. And so it's unique, it's original, and for that reason, I really enjoy this fragrance by Tom Ford, Lost Cherry. If you haven't tried it out, make sure to do so. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, if you're interested in sampling the top 3 fragrances in this list, and I think there's a lot of variety here. This one because of its wearability, this one because of its use of the note of cherry, this one because of its complexity and unisex nature despite the fact that it's marketed for women, and then of course this one doesn't actually contain cherry, and the list can go on and on. Thanks again for watching. I love you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.